Hello, I'm Mark, and welcome to part 5 of my Unreal Engine tutorials on how to build a multi-stage and non-linear questing engine for your Unreal Engine games. So in the last video, we went ahead and integrated our quest log components finally into our solution. So we went ahead and integrated that into the controller, and then we provided access to it from both the controller and the character through the use of an interface. And then we went ahead and hooked some things up so we could just do a quick little test to see, so we can add some quests in there and kind of see things in action. So in this video, I thought we're going to go ahead and look at some UI components. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a nice little UI component to kind of replace this little messaging here with a bit more of a polished system that will allow us to surface these messages in a more controlled way. And the way we're going to control the flow of these progression updates into the UI and display them is actually going to be done through a message queue. So I'm kind of excited to kind of show you how to do that. So as always, we've got a lot of ground to cover today, so let's get started. Okay, so in order to create this message queuing widget, and this is going to be a pretty generic pattern, and if you're looking for something similar for other things, you could probably take this pattern and just modify it a little bit, and you could create this from a very specific, which is what we're using here, and genericize it. And I'll show you where you can probably, the places where you might want to tweak this if you're looking for something like this to then genericize it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the content drawer, and I'm going to come down to our public folder in C++, and I'm actually going to create a new class, and this is actually going to be a custom user widget class. And so custom user widget is down here under visual widget user widget. This is the one we want. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to put this in a public folder, but I'm also going to put this into a UI folder under public, kind of keep it separate from the quest stuff. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it a name. And I'm just going to call this core quest progression widget. And I'm going to hit the create class, and we'll let Unreal Engine and Visual Studio do their thing and generate a template for us to work in for this custom user widget. All right, first compile of the day, usually the slowest. All right, hopefully we'll get a good compile. And all right, compile. So now we can come into the solution, and I'm just going to go reload all. And if I come over to the solution explorer under public, we now have a second folder, which is our UI widget here. So there's our UI widget, and I'm just going to come into public, and we'll find that information there. All right, so this is what Unreal Engine's created for us. We'll give it a couple of seconds to let the IntelliSense catch up. But while it's doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and start to add some includes. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in include in here. Let's see, let's do that, and let's go into questing. And so all I'm doing is the dot here. This is just a way of saying, hey, go back up. Yeah, since we're in the UI folder, just go back up one, and then we can come down into the folder that we need to come down into, and that's in call quest state data. So we need that, and I'm going to go ahead and create some sections here. Protected and a public. And lastly, I'm just going to go ahead and bring over an enum because hey, I love enums, as you can't tell. So this is just going to allow me to show and hide the UI. So that's all this is done. So I've got a show here and a hide here. And based on the state of the message queue, we'll determine whether we want to show the UI or not. So if there's nothing in the message queue, we're just going to hide, collapse the widget, hide it in the UI so we can maximize our real estate, our visual real estate. But on the other hand, if something comes into the queue, that'll be our cue to go and show the widget so that we can then start pushing those items into the queue to show what's show these progressions as they're coming in. All right, so that's all we need to do there. Let's come down to protected. So under protected, I'm going to add a couple of variables. One is going to be let's just bring in these two variables first. So the first variable is our message pacing rate. So this is going to be how quickly do we want to pop messages off the queue and display them in the UI. And so this is where this UI, we could actually use this for two ways of doing it. If you want to, we're going to use a list. So if you want a list, then what I'm probably going to do in the UI is and then that's why I made this blueprint rewritable edit anywhere. I can go in there and take this from 3 seconds to like 0.5 seconds, and because I want to pop it off the queue quicker, and I'm going to be putting it into a list that's going to be growing. But if you just wanted to show one widget at a time, then you could make this a lot, the pace rate larger. So you could make that maybe 4 seconds. And then what you then do is have the widget, once it's popped up, cook for like 3 seconds and then pop off and then bring the next, and then this one will then bring the next one in. So again, you can use those delays and timings to kind of get whichever type of display you want. But I'm going to be using a list, so I'll probably make this smaller when we get to the actual widget itself. And then finally, well, no, not finally, I should say, the next variable, I should say, is going to be our Quest Progression queue, and here it is. This is so Unreal Engine has a structure called queue type. So it's a typed queue, and you can then go ahead and create whatever structure. And this could be a struct, this could be an object. So if you want to, so I'm using this Quest Progression structure, but if you wanted to genericize it, you could just create a UObject of type UI display, right? And then you could then derive off that and then fill it. And you can do some using inheritance to make this more generic if you wanted to. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to keep it with the struct. And then we need some functions. So I'm actually going to bring it. So in the dialog, in the dialog system that I wrote, I used Blueprint Native. And with Blueprint Native, it allows you to execute code in the blueprint, but it also says that if I execute this, I could also have a section where I can actually execute code in C++ as well. So when I call that function, it will execute it in two places. It will execute in the C++ first, and then execute in the blueprint. Now, if I have something where I only want it in the blueprint, there is no C++, and that can be very useful when doing custom user widgets, we can then use this blueprint implement event instead. Does the same thing, but it just says that there's just no C++ part that could also be executed. And here again, we've got one which is the widget state. So this is going to be our show hide, and then this one is actually going to be what we pop off the queue and then send up to the blueprint so that it can then display it. So that's what those two functions are there for. And then I've got 3 more private functions coming in. So this one is a clear active timer. Since I'm going to be using timers, if this widget gets destroyed, I just want to make sure that if we have a delayed timer here, we want to clear it up. And then I have the initialized timer, and then we have the dispatch. So this is going to this function here, the dispatch. This is going to be running on the timed thread. That will then pop information coming into the queue, off the queue, and displaying it in the UI. And so then, to get information onto the queue, I've got this public function, which is our update quest progression. This is actually going to push it onto the queue, dispatch next progression. This is going to then pop it off the queue, and then so that it can then be shown in the UI. All right, so that's pretty much it for the structure. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and work on the implementation. So I'm just going to go show potential fixes. Might as well just do all of these, so it just run through them without having to keep coming back. All right. So the first one is going to be clear active timer. So on clear active timer, all I'm going to do here is, so for this one, we have this time handle. I want to make sure this is valid before we go ahead and clear it. This is useful if this widget hasn't been used and we try to clear a timer regardless, and this has not been instantiated, this will throw an error and could crash the game. So we want to make sure that this thing has been used. Once it's used, then we can go ahead and clear it. All right, so next is going to be init widget timer. Just gonna grab this. All right, and this is a pretty long one. So here we've got get world. So this is just using the timer, the time management system that's baked into Unreal Engine. So get world, get timers, just like here for clearing the timer. We're just going to set the timer. Here's the time handle. We go to this pointer for the context, and then this is the function. Just like with a delegate, it works very similar. Yeah, just a reference to the function that we're going to be running to dispatch off. This is our message pace, so this is how often we want it to tick. And then you have a true false here. So if you just wanted this to be like a delay, right? So do this, delay, fire once, and then clear yourself up. You would then set this to false, right? And this is kind of where we are in loop here. Otherwise, you'd set this to true, right? If you wanted it to versus setting it to true means that we want this to tick each and every time. So there is bool in loop. So we want this to be in a loop, and so that we will then tell it when to stop using the clear active timer function. So when we call that, then it will clear it and it will stop ticking. But yeah, and that way we can kind of control when the timer is being used a bit more. All right, so the next one is going to be, I'm going to probably go down to the update queue so we can push it onto the queue first. And then we'll do the dequeue last. So update quest progression, this is the end queuing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say check to see if this queue is empty, then we're going to go ahead and initialize the timer. So that's when we're going to go ahead and set this up so that it starts ticking. And then what we're going to then do is then we're going to say quest progression, and then on this progression we have the end queue, and this is what we use to add, and this can be whatever we want to add. So this structure we're adding onto the queue, so it's now being stored in the queue, ready to be popped off the queue. And that's all we're going to do there. So if this is, so what this is going to happen is that if this is empty, we're going to run this. Otherwise, if a message is coming in and this queue is already full or already has messages in there, then we don't need to keep reinitializing this widget because we're already ticking. All right, so next is going to be the dequeue and getting it off the queue. So to do that, we're going to come into the dispatch function here, which is going to be running on the tick. We're going to create a structure here, and this is just an empty structure. We're going to pass this into dequeue, and dequeue actually returns a boolean as well as the output structure, so, or the output parameter. And this is output parameters, whatever we've said is of type here. So what this is going to do is, if we successfully take something off the queue, we're going to go ahead and make sure that the widget is set to show, and then we're going to go ahead and update the. We're going to pass this message up to the blueprint so that it can then go and display that in the UI. If we don't successfully take something off the queue, i.e. there's nothing in queue, we're going to first check to make sure that the queue truly is empty. If it is truly empty, I'm going to clear the timer, and then I'm just going to go ahead and say, okay, hide the widget so that we can take it off the UI. And that's it for the custom code. So pretty simple. So now from here we can go ahead and go back into the editor, and we can now create a blueprint widget off this C++ code. Alright, so to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and minimize Visual Studio, and I'm going to come into the content drawer. I'm going to come down to blueprints. So as you can see here, we have quest tables. I'm just going to right click and go new folder and call this UI. And then in the UI folder, I'm just going to go ahead and create our new widget off that blueprint widget. So to do that, I'm going to come to user interface. I'm going to come down to widget blueprints, and we're just going to go ahead and find our custom widget blueprint. There it is, Core Quest Progression Widget. And I'm going to hit select. And we're just going to call it WB underscore, and we'll just call this one Quest Progression Widget. And we can open this up, and as you can see here, the parent class is set to Core Quest Progression Widget. Alright. So now, once we're in our Core Quest Progression widget, in the designers, let's go ahead and create a design. So to do this, I'm going to go find a size box. Yeah, and I'm going to use that here as our root. And I am going to set the size box to 600 by 100. So I'm going to override the width and override the height. I'm going to say 600 by 100. I think that's good. If you want it to be expanding, just take the height override off and it will just continue to go down. But you might want to put some control there, depending on how much you want to be flooding that box. Alright, within there, let's get a border going. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag a border into the size box. And while I'm here, I'm going to switch from fill screen to desired on screen. So that's actually what it's going to look like. Alright, so now that we've got the border, let's go back to border. I want to fill content. As far as the brush color, I do want to change that. I'm going to make this look a little bit kind of like a gray transparency. So I'm just going to do that. Oops. There we are. So there's that kind of like a gray transparency blur effect on the border. Desired, just gonna, and I don't think we need to do anything else there. Nope. All right, and so then once we've got the border in, and there's no padding or anything in there, we don't need any of that. Let's go ahead and I'm going to put the list box in, or the list view in. This is a great way to, when you're creating kind of like ordered lists, to kind of feed that information in there, and it keeps it organized, and then it also adds a scroll bar if you need the scroll bar. So it's a pretty good system to manage all that. So under here, I'm going to set this to 10 all round. Do some padding. Horizontal, vertical is okay. List view. Just gotta check against my other solution. Nothing there. Scroll bars, I think we're just going to keep the defaults, but again, you can make this as fancy as you want. As you can see right now, I hit the compile and there's a message here because it needs a widget to go into there, and we haven't done that yet. Right now I'm just going to go through the settings real quick. Style, search bar, scroll parameters. I think we're okay. We'll just keep everything generic. Alright, so that's the list, that's the scrolling. So what makes this nice is that we can then create a widget. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I found the best way to work when working with this is to actually create your widget through the editor. It just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to hit create new blueprint, which is a little plus button, and I'm just going to go down to third person, blueprints, UI, and we'll create a widget for this, and I'm going to call this BPC. It's just how I like to do things for widget blueprint components, and I'm just going to call this Quest Progression message. So that's what that is, and I'm just going to hit save, and it's going to go ahead and create the blueprint for me. I'm going to hit compile. I'm going to hit compile, and there you go. It's in, and now this is all satisfied. All the error messages are gone. So here's our widget. Right now, we don't have anything being put into there, but there's just our message there. All right. So now that I've got this, before we start filling out the actual message component, I want to go ahead and create a transfer object, because what we want to do is we want to transfer up that structure over into this message every time we pop it off. So to do that, I'm just going to go into content drawer, and under UI, I'm going to go ahead and create a blueprint class, and this blueprint class is a type object, and I'm going to hit select. And I'm just going to call it message DTO. It's just purely it's a transfer object, but I'm also going to add some functionality in there too. And I'm just going to move this over here so we can see the progression going. All right. So what I'd like to do here is, so because I'm going to be passing in, let's get the variables in here first. So we're going to be passing in a couple of variables. The first one is going to be the progression message. So that's the first one, and that is going to be of core quest progression. And since this is going to be data transfer, I'm just going to make this expose. So this is going to be instance editable, and I'm also going to set to expose on spawn. Hit complete. And since I want this message to be self-removing, so what's going to happen is we're going to push it onto the message stack. But what we want is each individual to say, okay, I'm on here for like 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, I'm just going to remove myself. So in order to know where to remove itself, we also need to put the list view. So this is going to be I'm going to call this self list, and this is going to be a type list view. And again, this is going to be instance editable, and it's going to be exposed on spawn. So these are the two things that we need to pass in from the when we're creating the widget over here. And these are the two things we need to transfer into the message over here. Okay, and then next, so since I actually have the data here, and to make my kind of like a little bit easier when outputting messages into the UI. I'm actually going to add some functionality here, and this is kind of like a pattern that you could use to make this a more generic list output, or however you want to do it, so it doesn't have to just be used for quest progression. So here I'm going to come up to functions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function called the set quest row, since I'm going to need a quest row. And set quest row is just going to be a void, and all it's going to do is it's going to take the message in, get message. I'm just going to go ahead and split this since we can, and then off here. So what we're doing is we're actually break data. So again, all of our quests are going to be passed through by the row handle. And again, by doing this, again, we can partition the tables out and make it a little, so we can make our quests more manageable. And so since we're partitioning it out, we need to go ahead and find it in the table. So we're going to say get data table. Get data table row is what we want. There's the utility, and all it's going to do is we're just going to pass that in there and pass that in there, and that will go ahead and find us our out row. And so we want to go ahead and set that. So because this can be whatever, we need to go ahead and I need to go and define it up here, and then we'll link it into the out row. So this is going to be quest row, and this is going to be core quest row. That's the type. So I'm just going to grab this, and I'm going to do a set, and we're just going to put that there if row is found. So if the row is found, we're going to get it, and then from here I'm going to put a return node and return, and that's all we're going to do there. So this is a set quest row, so we can set it, and once we've set it, now we've got access to the data that we can use to then start building out our message strings for the quest message thing that we're going to be building here. Alright, so then the next function I'm going to do is I'm going to create something called a get quest update function. So get, just going to call it get quest update. And on get quest update, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the progression message, get that, and I'm then going to say go ahead and split. And then on the outcome, I'm going to do switch. So again, I'm going to run a switch on this enumerator. And these are the types. So what I'm going to do is I want to build a string for our output. So to do that, I'm going to actually create some local variables. First one is going to be the outcome variable. And this is going to be of type text. And then the next one is going to be the type. And again, this is going to be a type text. And these are local variables, they're not global. So they're only local to this function. Outcome, I'm just going to go grab it, and I'm going to say set. And so this is going to be in progress. And I'm just going to do one for each of these outputs. So in progress is in progress. This is going to be quest passed. This one can be quest failed. And this one should not technically get called at the quest level, but we'll put something here. Quest is branching. Alright, so from here, I'm just going to go ahead and take this to the return node. And I'm just going to go ahead and just drag. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is I'm going to create a reroute node. And I'm just going to go ahead and just park all of these into that reroute node. So the idea here is we're just saying as part of the execution, there's a selection. It's going to select one of these, and once it selects it, then the reroute node is going to say, let's go back to the execution. And then here, I'm going to add a variable, and this is going to be, again, a text. And this parameter is going to be the call it the message update. And from here, I'm actually going to run a format string. So I'm going to format the text, and I'm just going to go bring this over. So the way that this works is anything in a curly brace is actually going to come down here, and that's going to be replaced. So I've just got a curly brace, a comma, or I know a colon, curly brace, colon. So it kind of helps space it out a little bit. Again, just making this as quick as possible. And then on here, I'm going to say, I'm going to get the quest row, and from here, I'm just going to break it. And then on quest name, I'm going to put that in there. On type. So here, I want to put a quest type. So it's going to be quest name, and then here we've got the outcome. So I'm just going to grab the outcome and just put that in there. So when this function gets called, this is just going to go ahead and create our the quest and the outcome and what it's doing. Alright, so that's one for quest. So we now need to do the same thing for stage and objectives. So to do the stage, get stage update. So to make things a little bit faster, I'm just going to go ahead and just copy all of this and just bring it over to, bring it over to here. And I'm just going to right click and then say create variable outcome. So that's created, and I'm just going to move this down to, hang on, delete, yes. What happened there? Oh, looks like I took a little extra off the top, so I'm just going to go put this back in real quick. So just connect that back to there, and we'll just connect these back into here. When I deleted that, it's a little too aggressive. Bring the outcome back in. Alright, we'll try this again. Compile, save. See if we can just save ourselves a little bit of time. And create local variable. That was the mistake I made. So that's where I want to do that. So I want to keep this local. Alright, so That's progression. Instead of quest, I'm just going to change this to stage. Stage, stage, and stage. Alright, so that is everything I'm just going to be bringing over. That is kind of the same. But there, yeah, so this is now a stage, so we need to do some additional data retrieval here. So for that, I'm just going to go grab our quest row, say get, and I'm going to go ahead and break this. I'm going to open this up, and I need the stages. So what I'm going to do is off the stages, I'm going to pull, and I'm going to say find. So we need to find a stage, but we already have the stage ID here, progression stage ID. So I'm just going to kind of connect that in there, and I'm just going to hide everything else there, make it a little bit easier to kind of see what's going on. Scoot this up a little bit. So what's going to happen here is that we already have we've already got the row, we already have this. Again, this is purely for outputting and reporting. So we're just going to go find that stage ID based on the progression message stage ID that we're passing through. And if we find it, so I'm going to put a branch, then we can go ahead and run this. So I'm just going to go pass this into there. I'm just going to go ahead and put a reroute node, and we'll just go ahead and put all of these into the reroute node. So if we successfully find this, again, this should be successful, but again, we're just putting some exception handling in here. If we don't find it, I'm just going to say return node, and we're just going to return a text, and this is just going to be, I'm just going to call this, I'm just going to call it update, and this would be stage not found, and I am going to just put that down there. Otherwise, if we're good, then we want the return node here. And again, I'm just going to go format text. And I'm just going to go copy the formatting for this and put it into here. So again, this is just going to be using, just make sure we got that curly brace. So type, name, and progress. So there it is. I'm going to add another variable called type. And this type, I'm going to compile it, is going to be stage. So type is just going to go into get type. Outcome, just like in Quest, is going to go into outcome. And then name, this is going to come from this. So I'm just going to break that. And here's our stage name. I'm just going to put that into there. No, I'm just going to move this up to here. Maybe move that there. A bit easy to read. And I'm just going to go ahead and hide everything that I don't need there. So all right, so that's stage. Okay, so then the last one I'm going to do is objective. So get objective update. So for this one, it's very similar to all the others. So I'm just going to go to stage. So I'm going to pull this from stage because we still need to do the stage because that's where the objectives are. So I'm just going to go copy that, and I'm going to bring it over here. I'm just going to hook that in. I'm going to right click and make sure I say create local variable. So there's the outcome, and that fixes that for me. Alright, so, and this is not stage, this is going to be objective. Objective. So this objective is branching, stages are going to be branching, so we should see some information there if we run a branching. Alright, so from here, again, we're going to have a branch to make sure that we only do this if this is successful. Now with this one, it's going to be slightly different from staging. I'm just going to go ahead and break it, but because what we now need is the quest objectives, and that's here. And I'm going to say, I'm just going to do a for each loop on this, and there's nothing else here because this is objectives, so I'm just going to hide that. And then off here, I'm just going to go ahead and say break. So this is the information that we care about. And so here, again, I am going to put a false in return. And I'm just going to add this and say update. And here I'm going to say, actually this would be stage not found. So again, this is more for debugging purposes. I'm kind of putting that in there just in case. So that's going to be the stage. If we have issues trying to find the stage, and then what we need now is trying to find the objective. So on here, I'm going to run a complete. So if we end up completing this, then if we end up getting to here, then what's happened is we couldn't find the objective. Then the objective ID is not right. So we'll just put that there. Otherwise, and the reason why I'm going to do this is because I'm going to put a return node if successful. That way it will break the loop without having to go all the way to completion. So that's what we're going to do there. So here I am going to do a couple of things. We've got the quest objective. So this is the objective data. I'm also going to need the progression message. So I'm going to grab this. And I'm also going to go ahead and I'm just going to split this because we're going to need information here. So here I'm going to run, so we have this is the objective that as we're iterating through, I'm going to do an equals, and we want this one to equal this one here. Branch again, so on body we're going to hook that one to there. So if we find this objective in this, which we should, then we can proceed to go ahead and output our string. So nope, return node. So there's our return node, and again I'm just going to go ahead and bring this out, and I'm going to say format text. So this is going to be a little bit more involved, so I'm just going to go grab this, a couple more parameters in here. So this one's going to have a type, a name, and then we're going to have the amount as well as the progress. So just a little bit more information in there than with the other two for now. So here I've got the amount, which is an integer. So this one is going to go, actually first off let's get the objective name. So name is going to go to name. We need a type, so I'm going to add another variable. I'm going to call it TY type, and in here I'm just going to say objective. So that's a local variable. So type is going to go into type, name is going to go into name, amount is going to go into total. So this is the total amount that we need. This is the amount that we are currently tracking to. And then progress, that's just going to come from outcome, and that's going to go here. And that should do it. And I'm just going to go ahead and just collapse this up, kind of tighten that up a little bit. All right, so that is, a little colorful. So that should do it for all the message types that we want to get out of here. So once we've got that, then I'm going to create one more function, which is going to be the get text. And all get text is going to do is we're going to say set quest row. We're just going to run that, and then I'm just going to take the progression message, and I'm going to go ahead and split this, and I'm going to do a switch on the message type. So these are the three types that we're currently supporting for the quest progression. And then off here, all we need to do is we're just going to say return node. I'm going to add a string, and I'm going to call this is the progression text. And then I'm just going to pull this one. Oh, actually, before I do that, I'm going to come back to these functions. Since these are pure getters, I'm just going to make these pure functions. So to do that, you can come over onto the right side here under details and just set them to pure. By making them pure, it's going to, just like when we do it in C++, it's now just going to make it a pure function. So it's just purely, whoops, purely going to just get that. I'm going to move that real quick. So if it's the quest, we're going to get the quest. I'm going to do this thing for stage and for objective, and I'm also going to do it for get text as well. Just make these pures. So stage, I'm just going to drag this, drop this, and I'm just going to copy. So for stage, it's going to go there, and that's for stage. And then if this is a objective, I'm just going to copy that, and I'm just going to put that into there and hook that to there. So again, so what's going to happen is we're going to call this function, we're going to get the row, and then what we're going to then do is figure out which one of these functions we call in order to format our text based on the information that's in here, and then we can return that back out. Okay, I'm going to hit save. All right, so now that that's done for the DTO, now let's go ahead and hook up the widget to the quest message here. So let's go ahead and just create this quest message first, and we'll work from the message back up to the widget again. Alright, so within here, now that we've got this, we need to do a couple of little things. Actually, no, let's go to the editor first. So under the editor, I'm just going to use a size box and a text box. So size box of 600 by 20, I think is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to enable width and height. So this is going to be 600, and 20 is what I'm going to use. I think that's plenty large enough. I'm also going to say desired on screen, so I can kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like. And then within the size box, I'm going to find a text box. And I'm going to make this a variable since we're going to be changing the text in here, and this is going to be txt progression. So we'll just do that, hit say, compile, save. And let's take a look. Since this is going to be 20, I kind of want to make this a bit smaller in the font. So let's go ahead and change this from 24 to, I think 14 was what I was going with. All right, looks good. And I'm just going to put some default text here, just so that we kind of get an idea of what's in there. And I'm just going to call this all right, so that's kind of just giving us an idea of what it's going to look like, setting that up. So size box, there it is, and we've made this a variable so we can see it in the editor here. So now what we need to do is so one of the, I don't know, it kind of feels weird when you go ahead and create one of these that it doesn't create the actual, it's using the user list entry, but we actually need a different interface. So it's not putting the right interface on here for some reason. So I need the onList item object set instead. So to do that, I am going to come under, in the editor, I'm just going to come to class settings, and we should see interfaces right here. So right now it's using the user list entry. I'm going to add the we want the user object list entry because we're going to be passing it in by objects, and I'm just going to remove the list entry since I'm not going to need that. And then from here I'm just going to drag, actually I'm just going to double click this, and we don't need to worry about any of that. All we need is this interface here. So this interface, so what's going to happen is as we create these things into the list, this interface is going to get called, and then this interface is what we're going to use to then cast to our DTO. So we're going to cast it, and then within here we're going to do a couple of things. If it's a good cast, we want I want a reference to the self list because this is what we want to use to remove. But also what I need to do is we need to set the text, and here's our text. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to say set text. Drag drop that, just move this up here. And because we put the all the functionality to create that into the DTO, all we need to do is just say get text, and there it is, and that's all we need to do there. So all we've done is we just moved. I like to move the logic to where the data is, so then it just makes this a little bit easier and cleaner to manage up here. So once this is done, I'm going to just make sure that this is a valid. Make sure that that object is valid, that we're going to be passing in. And if it is valid, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a delay. And for this particular widget, I'm going to put a delay of 5 seconds. So it's going to stay visible in the list box for 5 seconds. And then after 5 seconds, and I'm going to say remove item. And then it's going to just remove itself from the list. And that's why we're bringing this, we're going to bring the list pointer in so that it knows where to remove it. And the item that we're going to be removing is that item there, which is our DTO. So, and that's it. So this should then go ahead, and so as we're creating this, it will then go and figure out which message to put in there, put it into the text, and then after 5 seconds it will tell itself to remove itself from the list box. Alright, so that's what's happening on the component. So now let's go back up to our widget. Here, as you can see, we've now got this default text in there to kind of show us what it's going to look like. This is 4 of 5, so because there's 5 in there, the little sidebar's up. Alright, so now let's go ahead and work on the logic for this widget. Alright, so for this, so on event constructor, I don't need the pre-construct, so I'm just going to take the pre-construct out. So on this one, I'm actually going to go ahead, let's get the SB quest, and let's go ahead and set some of these variables up. So let's go back to the designer real quick. On the size box, so what I want to do is I want to show and hide the size box. So to do that, I need to make this a variable. So I'm going to set the is variable. I'm going to say SB progression. So that sets that one. And this is already a variable, but I'm just going to go ahead and give it a bit more LST. Compile, save, and we'll come back to the graph. Alright, so now I've got my 2 variables, and I'm also going to add an additional variable here, which is going to be a boolean is showing. And again, all of these are private, so we'll just keep them there. Alright, so event construct, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the size box. So let's go ahead and just SB, fix that little typo. So I'm just going to bring in the size box, and then on the size box, so but by default I'm just going to say set visibility, and I want to run the function, and I'm just going to say by default start this in collapsed mode. Alright, so then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to set the tick. So I'm going to be using this tick to determine when we need to hide the widget again. And this is going to be based off some variables. So I'm going to go ahead and get the list. So this is getting our list. And from here, there's a function on here which is called get number of items, so we can figure out how many items are actually in the widget, because we only want to hide the widget once the widget is empty. And I'm also going to grab the is showing, and this is going to be a get variable, and I'm actually going to run a not statement on that, so not boolean. And off here I'm going to put a less than, and it's going to be less than 1. So as long as there's more than 1 in here, and it's not showing, we're not going to do this, or we're not going to check. And then I'm going to run an AND, so I'm going to run a logical AND on here. So both these conditions need to be met before we hide. And I'm going to put a branch, and we're just going to hook this off the tick. And again, I'm just going to go grab this, and I'm just going to paste it here. So this is purely for hiding the widget again. So once these conditions, if it's empty and we're not showing, go ahead. Okay, so now that we've got that done, just make sure that we've compiled the. We want to make sure that we've compiled our widget again, since we already put it in there. So I'm just going to run a quick little compile to make sure that, because we're now going to be accessing. So we've got a lot of the generic stuff, which is already in the blueprint. So now we need access to the functions. So just make sure that once we've put all the code in, we've compiled it. So once it's compiled. The next function we're going to do is the update widget UI, which is our blueprint native. So here's our update blueprint widget native. And so this is going to be the one where when our background code in C++ ticks, it's going to fire this to then say, hey, we've got a new message to put up to the UI. So to do that, we're just going to run our where is it? We want construct blueprint. There it is. Construct object. So this is going to be our BP underscore. What do we call this message? DTO. So what we're going to do is this is going to spawn a new blueprint object for us of type message. The outer is self, progression, that's going to go into there, and we need to have a pointer back to our list. So here's our list. So we're just going to drop that right into there. And I'm also going to need this list so that once we create this object, we're then going to go ahead and add the item back into the list. And that should do it for adding the items to the list, and the items will then self-remove themselves after they've made the delay over here. Okie doke. So then we have, I'm going to put an event destruct. So this is useful for cleaning up anything that needs to be done if this widget ends up getting destroyed. So I'm going to call the clear active timers again, just to make sure that any active timers are cleaned up. The reason why I want to do this is if this widget gets destroyed, but the game has not been closed, right? We could still technically have that timer running in the background, and if that timer tries to execute a function that is no longer viable or is no longer there, again, we're going to have, the game could crash. So we just want to make sure we clean that up so that we don't have any issues there. And then the last function that we're going to write into here is going to be the update widget state. So again, this is being done from the background. And this is going to be a switch. And so let's go grab my size box. So if we're set to show, we want to go ahead and set visibility. And I'm going to set this to no hit testable self and children. And then I'm going to grab my showing and set this. So this is just going to, this flag is going to tell the UI up here that we're now set to showing, right? And so it can then start doing it. And the reason why we want to do this is because the UI is going to say, okay, set this to not show, but until everything in this list is gone, we don't necessarily want to close it yet. So that's why we have this separate variable up here. And then on hide, all we're going to do is we're just going to take this variable and we're going to turn it to false, back to false. All right. So that should do it for the widget, and that should do it for our putting the data in, and we've got the DTO, which is deciding which string is for us, so we're putting all that logic in there. So let me just do a quick mile high check to make sure we've got everything in there. Looks about right. So then the only other thing that we can do is set our message pacing. So if I come to class defaults, here's our pacing, right? So I'm going to just set this now to 0.5 for this widget so that we can pop off the queue a lot faster. So we're not waiting 3 seconds before we get the first pop. Alright, so now that that's done, let's go ahead and create a little HUD so that we can then put this widget in the HUD and then start tying it all together. Okay, so to create a HUD, let's go to content drawer. I'm just going to right click and we're just going to go to user interface, blueprint, and this can just be a regular user widget. I'm just going to say WB underscore player HUD. I'm just going to go pop this open, hit save, and then here I'm just going to use a canvas panel. So that will define the layout for us. And then I'm just going to then say WB underscore, here's our custom widget. I'm just going to grab that, put it on the canvas panel. Alright, so let's go ahead and into the designer. So for our widget in the canvas panel, anchors. So for this one, let's just keep it there, and I'm going to put position of 64, and I'm going to put a Y position of 52, kind of space it there. As far as size, I'm going to set that to 600, so it's going to give us a nice wide size there. And as far as the down, I'm going to go 150. So actually we'll probably go down to 110, kind of clean, tighten that up a little bit. So there's our list box. It's sitting in there now, all set up. And I'm just going to hit compile and save. And then the only thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an extra little function in the graph, so we don't need any of this. I'm going to go ahead and create a add custom event, and this is going to be update widget. I'm going to do it here versus doing it on any ticks or any or trying to bind this to the event log. Just keep things a little bit decoupled. And then again, this is just going to take the progression struct. So let's just go ahead and actually what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and grab the Quest widget here, and I'm going to say update Quest Progression. So this is the information that I need to update, and then I'm just going to go grab this and drag this back here, so it'll just add it in for us automatically. And that's all I'm going to do here. So now I can come back to our third person character, and let's go ahead and add that UI in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this out, and I'm going to put the code right here. So to do that, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag off here, and I'm going to say create widget. So I'm going to use this utility here to create the widget, and I'm just going to say wb underscore player HUD, since that's the widget. And from here I'm just going to then say set variable, and then off the variable I'm going to say add to viewports, and then we're just going to connect that. So we'll do the bindings after we've done that. Just going to put a little spacing in here, and let's go ahead and name this player HUD. Alright, so now we've got our player HUD create, so this will create it on begin play. All of that will be done. We'll create our bindings. So then what I'm going to now do is I'm just going to come down to our code down here, and all I'm going to do is grab the player HUD, and on here I'm going to say update progress widget, and I'm just going to drag that straight from the delegate, which is being fired here, the binding, and I'm just going to go ahead and just drag that straight into there, and we can now remove, just going to break that link, all of this stuff out here. I'm just going to push that out there for now. So now that's all tied into there, and so we should have now a nice little progression widget which we can then use to kind of see all of the quests going in. So right, so let's go ahead and go back to the solution, fire it up, and let's see this thing in action. So I'm just going to go ahead and move this off real quick so we can go ahead and fire this up. Okay, so now we just need to fire this up, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit play. As you can see, there's nothing in the queue, so I'm just going to hit my 1 key, and we're just going to load up our quest log with all these quests. So as you can see, the progression is going in there, and as you can see now it's being popped off. We have our timer quest running, it's auto complete, and there it is, quest stage. Alrighty, and there it is, it's clearing itself out. Okay, so I think that's going to do it for this tutorial, or this video. The next video, I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create the quest log, and if we have time we'll create the tracker component. So that way we can then, as we feed these quests in, we can then start seeing them in the quest log, and you know, as well, and then hopefully we'll also put it into the tracker component so we can see it being tracked. So as always, if you like what I'm doing, feel free to like and share my videos, as well as subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will see you again in the next video. Cheers and have a good day.